It's April 25th, 1945. The German prisoners of war assemble on deck to disembark. Greeted by the small island with the Statue of Liberty, it works its magic as smiles break across the faces of us, foreign soldiers. Soldiers who, despite all our efforts, are conscious that we are prisoners in the freest land under the sun. But our hearts beat in unhappiness, despite the impressive display that surrounds us from all sides. Our amazed focus is on the mighty monuments of stone. The skyscrapers of Manhattan, weathered grey, cold and foreign, stand completely impersonal, towering in the American sky. Then, in deep shame, we glance at our worn uniforms, whose colour can no longer be distinguished. Even when everyone had done their very best with what was available not to frighten the unknowing citizens of this war-spared land, our clothing is nothing more than rags. Our appearance depresses everyone at the moment. On the other side of this great harbour, we four friends stand and take in together the impressive view of the unequalled city. Why, I ask myself and friends, looking toward the skyscrapers, have the Americans built such gigantic structures? It is as easy to explain as the pyramids of the ancient Egyptians, offers Schultz. Then I can imagine that the land here must be extremely expensive, and so they simply built in the direction of heaven. But I would not like to live in those beehives. I like the cottages on the other side of the river much better, declares Hocker. I agree with you, Siegfried chimes in. As impressive as those cement piles are, I wouldn't live in them even for free. We will not have that dilemma, but look at the cars going down the harbour road. I call the attention of my companions to the endless line of automobiles travelling alongside the Hudson River. I thought there was also gasoline rationing here, Hocker notes, just as a ferryboat with the marking New York Central System comes alongside. A civilian, who has been on board since early morning, instructing us in filling out all the forms, calls out, "Attention, only 3 men at a time on the gangway. In your left hand, have your sold book, and in your right hand, the forms. Give the papers to the Americans, move on to the gangway, and go over to the ferry. That is all. Move out and no shoving. You all may go on land." While the deck of the Thomas Marshall slowly empties as the ferry boat takes us on, we see some distance away other ferry boats which also have German prisoners on board. Apparently we are not the only prisoners that the convoy has brought here. An hour later, we leave the Thomas Marshall with a quiet sadness in our hearts. We turn our backs on the brave ship and its fair crew. Awaiting our fate, hundreds of eyes stare at the land of unlimited opportunity that we are quickly approaching. It is exactly 12:18 p.m. as Hocker and I set foot in the new world. Like lightning, my thoughts speed back the more than 4,000 miles to the homeland and search without success for my dear loved ones. As a consequence, an impatient US soldier shoves me in the ribs with a red lacquered stick and brings me back immediately to reality. "Let's go," bellows the soldier, thereby introducing us to the American tempo, something that hits us like a whirlwind. In an unbelievably short time, we are separated into groups of 50 and marched to gigantic barracks just as the captured freight of another steamer from the convoy disappears. Faster than we can comprehend, we are in a room and, in obedience to the command, tear the clothing from our bodies while men, black with gleaming white teeth, throw nets back with 2 brass tokens down onto our heads. Seconds later, our clothing is in the sacks on the way to the delousing chamber. The only exception is our leather boots, which we carry into the shower room. The Americans have organized things well, and we think of nothing until after we have showered, dried, been sprayed with delousing powder, searched for skin diseases, weighed, measured, put on our damp rags, and are herded together into a large room. But there is no time to rest. After the last of our group of 50 stumbles into the room, the wall behind us opens to reveal the 90-foot distance to the end of the barrack. We line up in rows, 15 feet apart, and make our way out of the room. As we go around the corner, there is a line of guards with their backs to the water, apparently stationed to prevent any freedom-longing prisoner from jumping in. These soldiers, however, demand little attention. Instead, it is a single fat individual, with the characteristics of a specific race that has good cause to hate us, who becomes the focus of our interest. He shoves a long needle into the buttocks of each German who passes by, and although far removed from every battlefield, carries out his own kind of war. Immediately I stop running and limp past him, looking at my wound as he yells and claps his hands for joy over my pain. Once I reach the end of the barracks, I turn and grin at the narrow-minded jerk. With his fleshy face and belly hanging over his belt, he repeats the malicious applause, and I respond by giving him the finger, then quickly slip weasel-like around the corner, but not without first stealing a glimpse of our furious oppressor. In the next moment, I reach a room lit only by a skylight, and in which my comrades and I look, like caged apes, at the railroad tracks that run through the building. But here, there is no wait. In 30 minutes, we find ourselves in a building adjacent to a New York railroad station, and within another half hour, at least 1,200 German prisoners of war are assembled and once again subjected to a search. For this purpose, containers are set up that look just like our food barrels in Le Mans and Cherbourg. But here they are used as garbage cans into which the black soldiers throw the last of our possessions. Using my total knowledge of English, I speak to a soldier in an attempt to recover my earlier diary notes. Even though they are severely damaged, I am successful thanks to Dr. Brown, who tries to explain to the black soldier that the notes are necessary for his study. As the man turns his back to the garbage can, I quickly reach in and lift out my notebook and my shaving kit, in which I find my cigarette case. We are not the only ones who recover lost possessions. Actually, it is not so hard since the blacks consider it all trash that their white countrymen pull out of the pockets of strangers to throw in front of their brooms. At 5:35 p.m., as we climb into the train cars, another wonder of the New World occurs along with those we have already experienced. The skyscrapers, auto traffic, and exemplary demonstration of organization. The entire train is made up of first-class Pullman coaches on whose fine upholstered seats we are to sit. But there is no waiting or pushing here and there. The doors are barely closed behind the guards, who get on with us, when a signal sounds and the train begins to move. Only two things trouble us: that we can only raise the windows a short distance, since small pieces of wood have been nailed to the outside frame, and that armed guards are assigned to each coach. But in reality, we are prisoners of war, and not the sons of millionaires going on vacation. While my pen scratches over my paper recording what I have experienced today, the last houses of New York flash past, and an officer enters our coach and reads the 5 rules for travel. You will stay in your seats in this coach until we reach our destination. You will eat and sleep here. You will raise your left hand when you must go to the toilet and wait to be recognized by the guard. You will raise your right hand when you want a drink of water, and only one can be permitted out of his seat at a time. Whoever feels sick should indicate to the guards by raising both hands. The officer has barely left our wagon to continue his litany in the next, when 2 blacks in snow-white jackets appear and pass out cups and paper plates. They are followed by 2 others who bring a canteen of heavenly-smelling coffee, serving the costly drink in the cups we have been given. A few minutes later, the plates are filled with a meagre serving of baked ham, eggs, and fried potatoes. It tastes much better than the fare on board the ship, and we gulp it down in terrible hunger. It's too bad that our plates are empty, but there are no second helpings. To our disappointed faces, the guards simply tell us to throw our cups and plates out through the crack in the window. "Throw it away. You will receive everything new," they say. It was something we had heard before, but, sorry to say, had not yet been fulfilled. Finally, we are left to ourselves. Our tired arms and legs stretch out while our eyes take in the foreign landscape through which the train hurries on its way. "Now what do you think of America?" Siegfried asks, yawning, with his mouth open so wide that you can see the 2 gold crowns on his back teeth. "I like it," I laugh, free of the fear that had been troubling my soul. "No reason to complain. I do believe that all of them here are filthy rich," offers Hocker, who sits next to me as the train thunders through Chester. "The organization in the harbour was impressive, but when you think that everyone here is rich, you have been asleep, Willie," Schultz instructs. I noticed, by the way, at the train station, how a pair of women in uniform made the sign of cutting our throats, It is clear to me that even in this land there is much that we will have to face. But Schultz, I did not expect a beauty queen to throw her arms around me. By comparison with Russia, for example, the difference is like heaven and hell. April 26, 1945. As night turns to day, the cities of Harrisburg and Pittsburgh are behind us. The land appears gigantic and virgin as the sun shines in the unending distance. Here and there, a farm lies in the sparse vegetation of early spring. In contrast to Europe, it takes an hour before the train reaches another inhabited place. Weary and hungry, we look bleary-eyed at the unpopulated stretches. Finally, a black porter appears and serves coffee, ham, eggs, and fried potatoes. If there were not 14 hours difference between this and our last meal, one would believe it is a continuation of the first, because there is no difference in the food that is offered. Didn't I say that hunger would be our true companion in America? Asks Schultz, as we, in disappointment, throw the empty cups and plates out the window. Yes, Schultz, that's what you said, and that's why I ate all my reserves. Siegfried laughs without concern in the early morning. I certainly understand something about cooking, but I must admit that the stuff does taste good even if we have to eat the same thing again, Hocker honestly concedes. Only too little, way too little, Schultz adds. You were always satisfied. What's the problem that you find a hair in everything? I search out in Schultz's closed face. Nothing's wrong, absolutely nothing. Everything is in the best order. We travel in Pullman coaches through the United States, permit blacks to serve us, and imagine that we will end up in some resort. There's a half-breed Indian with a rifle, and when we want to limp to the back, we have to first get his permission. You make a great show for the little food we get and act as if ham and eggs were discovered here. Therefore, I must look into your radiant eyes when such a war profiteer stands at the railroad crossing in his luxury car. But just wait and see how thick we come in the end. Are you completely turned around? I ask in amazement. In no way, he replies with scorn. Schultz, I hear from you only envy. Be honest, you imagined America would be different. Siegfried throws at him. You thought for sure we would be transported in cattle cars and land someplace in the deep forest. Then you could have complained, and it would have been better for you. Instead, we are going through a cultivated land, sitting in a first-class coach, and you are disappointed because you can't see the forest for the trees. You are stupid, challenges Schultz. Don't you know that everything here has been cut down, and that they carried out such a pillage that even the climate has changed? Have you forgotten that this country is at war, and it's easier to make first-class coaches available than freight cars? Congratulations, Schultz, your memory still works. Siegfried responds with mischief. Perhaps I don't know enough about this country. How should we know anything about it? I question. I know that it was discovered by Columbus in 1492. Look out there, the city is called Columbus, Hocker yells. See, I'm right. Columbus was certainly here. I join in the general laughter and look out the window at the city as the train roars on. And what else do you know about this country? Schultz once again picks up the topic. As I already said, not much. After the discovery, Europeans came and settled the land. New York was called. There were people here before Columbus's discovery, says Schultz sharply. Clearly the Indians, Siegfried quickly adds. That's right, Schultz pushes on. And where are they now? I suppose the young ones are in the army and the old ones are hunting, Siegfried offers in simplicity. You know very well where they are, my friend, Schultz snaps. Then say it. They were exterminated, just like they will exterminate us. That's what you were leading up to, Siegfried continues with scorn. Let's forget the nonsense, boys. It doesn't lead anywhere. I break in once again. Why shouldn't it lead somewhere? It's a fact, or will you argue that this country belongs to the Indians? Schultz continues, unwilling to leave the fruitless topic. Naturally, you are right, but that was a long, long time ago. Later, they had to bring in black slaves and so on and so forth. It is always the might of the powerful that will rule the world. What else do you want to know? I ask in disgust. Nothing more, because you are already blinded by the glitter and riches of this land. Schultz responds, feeling misunderstood. Don't be so dumb, Schultz, Siegfried retorts. I'm impressed with the people here. Their forefathers had enough of Europe's oppression and fought here for their existence. As land grabbers tried to implement 18th century European methods of oppression, the citizens here turned to their weapons. The first shots were fired in Massachusetts that led to the War of Independence with England. In Boston, they preferred to throw the English tea into the ocean rather than pay taxes to a distant king. Even Goethe was impressed with the result of this struggle. That's it, Schultz. That also impresses me, in contrast to the European hair-splitting. And I recommend that you open your eyes. Throw away all your prejudices. It is never too late to learn something more. In Baltimore last night, your poem from the 12th century closed your eyes. The city has nearly 1 million inhabitants and over 1,000 factories. Now you are worrying about Indian wars instead of looking out to the land to see what's happening. In anger, Siegfried chews on his fingernails after his admonition. Schultz is upset and withdraws into the corner of bitter truth. It was the influence of our sumptuous meal, I think to myself, and am ashamed of my own lack of knowledge of America. While the train thunders in a southern direction out of Columbus, most of our comrades are asleep. Even the guards are no longer as attentive as at first. Wearily, they are posted between the door casings and gape sleepily at the other prisoners. In their slumber, they are not disturbed by any thoughts of escape. Since there is nothing special to see out the window, we also close our eyes until the train rolls into Cincinnati, and the black caretakers put dishes in our sleeping hands. Immediately, everyone is awake. Even the guards press on the windows. "Cincinnati," says one of the guards without thinking to a German, who immediately answers no. "Yes," says the guard, staring at the wobbly Schwab. "No," he gushes again as the American starts to wonder himself. "Of course," he tries his luck once more. "Kiss my ass, you dumb fool," is the reply in German. "What's wrong?" I ask quickly, trying to clear up the misunderstanding. "That guy is crazy," the honest Schwab dryly answers. He continues to ask me if I am a Nazi. "Sind Sie ein Nazi?" Everyone shakes with laughter as the guard looks at us, perplexed. Quickly I explain to him, and he understands. Forgetting his orders, he tumbles out of the wagon, rolling with laughter. A moment later, he returns with his fellow guard, and the laughing does not stop. Finally, Cincinnati is behind us, but the guards continue to come and see the man who provided the best joke of the day. April 27th, 1945. After a long stop at night, the train continues into the third day with its long and by now uncomfortable trip westward through the broad land. The 2 meals a day and lukewarm drinking water do not help to make the trip very comfortable for us. In all ends and corners of the wagon, grumbling is in full force. Seldom does a fleeting village offer any change. But the Americans conduct themselves properly toward us in all places. Not one false statement or threat can be registered. Although it is easy to see the surprise in their faces when they see us, quickly they fall back into indifference, and in part sympathy for us. But hate, visible hate, is not there. Even our friend Schultz appears to have lost his initial rejection of everything American. "Do you believe that we will be herding cattle in Texas?" He laughs after a meal of hot dogs, potato salad, and coffee. "It would be wonderful to ride a stallion over the prairie," I say, looking out at the sparse landscape. "You read too much Karl May," he kindly winks at me, to which Siegfried joins in the conversation. "In Texas, it is hot and lonely, nothing but cattle, cowherders, and no girls." But before we reach the city, the train unexpectedly rolls across a bridge under which the dirty brown flow of a mighty river drifts southward. Missouri River or Mississippi River is the question, and regretfully no one is in a position to answer for sure. Even the guards shake their heads. But quickly the scene changes, and we forget the wild, unregulated river as the train comes to a stop on one of the many tracks in the railroad yard in St. Louis. A large and old city lies hidden from us in the haze. We have a great desire to visit the city, to glimpse inside the houses, simply to be with people again, but we are prisoners shut off from life. Instead, we watch the railroad workers and especially the children on the nearby street. We observe that nearly all of the men are wearing military pants, shirts, and jackets, while the children, in comparison to Europe, are more practically clothed. The boys wear simple blue or khaki-coloured pants and a coloured shirt. The pants on the girls reach only to their calves, and they wear blouses in dazzling colours. In their play, they are just as active and dirty as everywhere. When they notice that we are watching them, the little ones stick their fingers in their mouths, while the bigger ones hop the tracks and come to our wagons, where they stand in shock. Although they do not stop gazing at us, they do seem a little more trustful. Certainly they think we are the damn Nazis who come from legendary old Europe, about whom their teachers have told so many horrible things. Since the train does not appear to be ready to leave, a large group of people gathers around the window. The prisoners look with lustful eyes at a group of sumptuous young ladies who are loading packages into a transport nearby. They throw flirting glances toward our windows. When one of the railroad workers starts up a conversation with us, even the girls come closer. Not one of our usually adventurous group moves from his place, even though the girls generously make their way to us with blouses filled with risk and desire. It's not that we are not taken with the charm of their hills and valleys, but it is our neglected clothes, long unkempt hair, 3-day beards, and the whole shabby situation that keep us in our places. But even the workers are not in their evening dress, and when we are addressed in German by one of them through the crack in the window, everything seems to happen naturally. "How are you, my countrymen?" An old and quite worn worker asks us in a Swabian dialect and looks compassionately through the dusty window. "Let me wipe the dirt from the window so that we can see each other better," he begins and goes right to work. "So," he says with a nearly toothless mouth, "now how are you?" "Good, as far as someone in our situation can expect," I answer him quickly. "Be glad that you are out of that crap. I was in the last war with the Prussians and I know the swindle. No one needs to tell me about it. I was a non-commissioned officer, and I'm happy that I am too old for this one. You are so dirty. Did you come right out of the trench?" "No, we spent the winter in a French field behind barbed wire." Hocker laughs. "Even worse, I did the same thing. I was captured in 1918, released in November, and came to the States in 1924. Stay here, boys. We have enough girls who want to marry industrious men. Take a look for yourselves." He laughs, pointing to the girls. "What is the matter, Pop?" one of the bold girls asks as she comes up to the window. "Just my type," growls Hocker. "Boy, you have good taste," I think to myself. She is really a nice dish. Her well-formed breasts press against the thin blouse, and their round form is easy to discern. "She is a racetrack," snaps Siegfried hungrily. "Just look at those dangerous curves." "Don't you have a souvenir for the young lady?" the old man asks over the noise at the window. "Yes," says Hocker, and lightning-like tears a star from his shoulder and passes it through the window crack to the old man, who in turn gives it to the good-looking girl. Blushingly, she thanks Hocker and goes back with swaying hips to her girlfriends, holding the star over her charming head like a victory trophy. Siegfried grouses, "What a damn thing to do, to come and parade something like that in front of us after such a long time. Here, boys, a few cigarettes." The old man appears once again before the window and shoves 3 packs of Lucky Strikes through the crack, something that is happening at the same time all along the train. "That's the goddamn Germans," bellows a fat, recently arrived Yankee, shaking his head and nervously chewing his cigar as he sends the men back to work. A short time later, the train moves out again. Accompanied by the friendly goodbyes of the girls and children, we fall into the dreams of an endless night. April 29th, 1945. Early in the morning on the 5th day of our journey, we reach Tulsa. It is Sunday throughout the world, and once again we have the opportunity to see well-fed citizens in their Sunday best streaming into a magnificent church. How that can pain an innocent prisoner's heart, only those who have been in a similar situation and who have had to look into the uncomforted eyes of their comrades can know. But it is useless in the spring of 1945 to complain of injustice when we consider how unjustly millions of others have been treated. Then there are others concerned every minute with the necessities of life, while we journey toward a safe but unknown fate. As the temperature rises, we leave the city. and an hour later we are immersed in the loneliness of the hilly landscape. As the heat in our wagon climbs to an almost unbearable temperature, the train stops at an open station. Outside the window stand white-helmeted American soldiers holding their rapid-fire weapons at the ready. "Get out!" rings in our dust-covered ears, and all the doors open. With well-practiced precision, the entire transport is assembled in 3 lines in only a few minutes. Slightly irritated, Hocker, Siegfried and I notice that Schultz, in the confusion, was shoved by the military police into another group. But he waves to us, unconcerned. We look calmly toward the camp that lies about a mile in the distance and whose green and white painted barracks glimmer in promise under the southern sun. Surrounded by military police, the first column, in which we 3 friends find ourselves, begins the march toward the camp. Within 20 minutes we reach the gate, over which stands in large letters, Camp Gruber, Oklahoma. We don't know whether to laugh or whether we are just dreaming about the blade-sharp creases in the khaki pants of the prisoners strolling around the compound. Once again we are counted, searched, marched toward the apparent heavenly kingdom through lanes formed by former North African veterans and welcomed by the German camp spokesman. "I greet you in the name of the comrades in the prisoner of war camp Camp Gruber in the state of Oklahoma and offer you our hearty welcome." The German camp spokesman begins his speech as we, the veterans of the Lime camps of France, sit in the dining hall. Judging by your appearance, it does not take many words to know what lies behind you, but you can be sure that inside these barbed wires, everything will be done to make your heavy burden lighter. And now I wish you a good appetite. Quietly, and with everyone busy with his own thoughts, we grasp the eating utensils. In the nickel-plated trays are piles of roast beef, spinach, potatoes, and pudding. Because we are not used to such a feast, we begin slowly, then with greater enthusiasm, and finally with great pleasure enjoy the tasty meal. But the dining room is boiling hot, and thick, unending drops of sweat pour from our bodies. Finally, like refugees, we leave the hospitable room and go back toward the barracks. "This heat is terrible," stammers Hocker, and like me, rips the dirty uniform from his body. Strangers, with whom we must share their living space, observe us with obvious disgust. "In 14 days you will be used to the climate," a large blonde-haired soldier lying on his bed advises us with a friendly laugh. Surprised, I look at him. On his nightstand, next to the picture of a black-haired girl, no one other than Adolf Hitler looks out from a homemade frame. Now I notice that nearly all of these former members of the Afrika Korps have small swastika flags over the heads of their beds. It dawns on me that in truth we are in a different world. After 2 hours of a death-like midday sleep, I roll out of the sweat-soaked cover onto my feet and with Hocker follow the call to get our clothing issue. As we come back, I notice with astonishment that someone else has apparently taken up residence in our places, because lying on the beds in careful order are brand-new toothbrushes, fine soap, shaving equipment, and wooden sandals. "Did someone make a mistake?" I ask with contained anger. "The stuff belongs to you, comrades. Thanks is not necessary because it is from what we have extra." The blonde-haired man finally moves himself to explain. "Yes, but we can't." "Yes, you can." He cuts me off. "You can actually do more. That is, go into the shower room and change yourselves into human beings. We know how you feel. We travelled halfway around the world before we could finally have a shave." By evening roll call, most of those from our transport stand in tip-top form, clothed in the khaki uniforms. Only the long hair and pale faces separate us from the old-timers, who, for the most part, wear the field caps of Rommel's army. Before dinner, I have the pleasure of greeting an acquaintance from my neighbourhood. "We'll drink a bottle of beer together in the canteen tonight," he says as we say goodbye after a chat, just like we had run into each other in a German barracks. "I wish you could say that," I laugh at him. "Oh yes," he remains standing. "There is beer in the canteen." At 7 p.m, we meet each other at the bar in the canteen. Generously, my acquaintance buys a variety of things for me. In amazingly well-stocked shelves lie cigarettes, tobacco, billfolds, and other toilet articles. There are also underwear, wood sandals, socks, and towels. It is impossible to describe with what feelings I take the whole thing in. But I do not have any time to spend with my thoughts, because my companion pushes me into another room, where we find a free place and sit down behind our bottles of beer. At 9 p.m, the lights go out and I know nothing anymore. Have I really experienced this day, or am I lying in a tent in France, crazy with fever? April 30th, 1945. After the most thorough cleansing ordeal of my life, I am in the shower dressing room and slip into the white underwear and the khaki uniform of the American Army, with the painted letters PW. In a cloud of perfume mixed with aftershave lotion, Hocker and I leave the bath facilities with a regained consciousness and go into the mess hall to eat breakfast. We take milk and cornflakes from the counter and sit down at a table. It's too bad that Schultz ended up in another compound, I say to Hocker as I bend over my milk bowl. Perhaps it would be possible for him to change with someone, Hocker suggests. Possible, I agree. Let's give it a try. But look, here comes Siegfried. Hello, how are the two of you doing? You brothers smell like French whores. He grins all over and sits down by us. Schultz was unlucky, he continues. We were just talking about him, I answer. Oh, well, let's not spoil our appetite. This is a stinking good store, as he turns to his cornflakes. Do you like your barracks? Hocker asks. Not exactly. I am not with any of the old group. Do you know that the idiots here think we are all traitors and deserters? He says bitterly. That's not possible, I insist. Listen to me. Keep your mouth shut and don't talk about the lost war here, Siegfried advises. They will throw you into the barbed wire. In my barracks, everyone has Adolf hanging over his bed. By the way, supposedly someone was tried here for high treason and hanged. Just where did you dig up these cock and bull stories? I ask in disbelief. You can hear it all in my room. He nods back and forth while spooning the milk from his bowl. It is understandable. I try to place myself in the world of thought of these men of the Afrika Korps. Part of them have been prisoners since 1942 and don't know about the situation in Russia or France. But they have newspapers here, for hell's sake. They must know what is going on. They don't believe it, Siegfried interjects. The best thing for us to do is keep our mouths shut. Otherwise, there will only be trouble, and that doesn't help anyone. I don't criticize anyone who still believes in what we all once hoped for. The day will come when everyone will have to correct his outlook. But I do condemn those who scream that they knew what was going to happen ever since 1933, and then trample on others while they buddy up to the Americans. I'm of the same opinion, Siegfried adds. But it doesn't matter at all. If you went along, you are condemned. The Americans don't care what we think or don't think. They are only interested in victory. Hocker ends the discussion as we gather our dishes together. After morning roll call, we are sent to the barber while the work groups go out to pick cotton. In a conversation with the German camp spokesman, we learn that not all of us will necessarily stay in this camp, but that all non-commissioned officers will be transferred to another camp if they elect not to work. Although he is of the opinion that we should be of as little use to the Americans as possible, the camp spokesman recommends that in our own interest we should go to work. The days will pass more quickly, and we can earn $20 a month, which in purchasing power is about the same as 20 Reichsmarks. Otherwise, we receive only $5 and are denied the right to purchase tobacco. He also thinks that things are a little confused at this time, and we will have to wait and see how everything goes. That answers the question about Schultz. With the hope that in a few days we will be reunited, the three of us enter the barber shop and finally rid ourselves of our long manes. During the course of the morning, we are not bored. The time is taken up in filling out registration forms, undergoing a doctor's examination, receiving shots, having photographs taken, and giving fingerprints. Finally, around 1 p.m., we are once again assembled in the dining room. The well-prepared noon meal consists of sauerkraut, mashed potatoes, and mutton chops. It tastes wonderful, but the terrible heat makes us sleepy. The change in climate at this time of year makes it especially hard for the body to adjust. In order to prevent the loss of body salt, salt tablets are distributed, and the doctors encourage us to drink at least 2 quarts of water a day. After we have drunk 1 quart, we disappear into the barracks. We lie on our beds in our underwear and wait for the coolness of evening. Shortly before the return of the work details, we friends undertake a tour of the camp. The rectangular barracks, built of plywood, remind one at first of the 12-man army tents with which we became acquainted in Alençon. Painted green on the outside, they are very comfortably outfitted. The bright grey walls help the small windows provide excellent light to the interior. On the somewhat larger side walls, there are single iron frame beds painted black. The nightstands are built by the prisoners themselves, and, for the most part, decorated with pictures of family members. The shelves hold toilet articles and writing materials. The prisoner's wardrobe consists of a khaki shirt and trousers, an olive green suit, underwear, and 2 pairs of shoes. Stated simply, it is the same outfit as that of the US soldier. In addition, every man possesses the obligatory sea-sack, in which all of our old things are stored. The barracks are heated with natural gas. Everything is there for the prisoners of war. In comparison with what we have experienced, it is very comfortable, but that is only secondary, since we are mostly interested in the garden plots in the camp. All barracks are surrounded by green grass. The streets and sidewalks are spick and span clean and framed by small, bright limestone pillars. In the middle of the compound is a miniature obelisk with the insignia of the paratroopers, a plunging eagle. There is also a relief of the entire continent of Africa, with a miniature of Rommel's tanks pushing as far as El Alamein. Then we stand before a wonderful creation that charms us all, the mill in the Black Forest Valley. It is an authentic model on which nothing is missing. Even the clapper of the mill wheel is easy to distinguish. It is true, and what ability and what love was necessary to create such a masterpiece. Black Forest, my homeland, you are so beautiful. How do you like it here? A grey, crippled Africa fighter asks us as we watch a group of turtles and admire their lovemaking. Very good, I respond, still under the influence of what I have just seen. Yes, when I came here it looked pretty bad, he says as he sits down on a curbstone. Nothing but sand and a few barracks, I can tell you. Were the Americans in agreement with everything that was built here? I ask. Yes, sir. The boys were enthused, he remembers with glee. They even helped us. Everything was different than now. Shit. We should have gotten to know each other earlier, the Americans and us. We would have complemented each other very well. You can believe that the English would have had to fight their lousy war alone. Now we both sit in the muck. We are on the ass of the Prophet, and the Yankees have the Russians at their throat. The whistle has blown for roll call. We'll see you again, comrade. We nod as we toddle to the parade ground, still thinking about what the old fellow said. A queer codger, Hocker notes as we line up. Children and fools speak the truth, Siegfried adds. May 4th, 1945. All the newly arrived non-commissioned officers are to report immediately to the American orderly room to prove your rank, the camp officer of the day announces throughout the camp. Are you crazy? We had to give up our sold books when we left the ship in New York, someone screams from under the shower. Then you were lucky, comrade. The Americans took them all from us when we were captured, another comforts us. Man, I am lucky that I hid mine in the last minute, Hocker announces happily. Mine is lying in Paris in the prison, Siegfried reports, uncaring. Oh well, I comfort myself. I have 2 photographs and a telegram with my exact address, which should be official proof. You can wipe your hind end with them, an old-timer counters. All that stuff doesn't matter. The Americans want a sold book or a document like the orders promoting you to sergeant. I sent those documents home a long time ago, I explain. Then the only possibility is to write to Geneva. Many of us did that, and we were able to receive verification of our rank, another counsels me. The Americans should worry about that. My sold book is in New York. They only need to ask, I conclude. Everyone can say he is such and such a rank, and a picture or letter is no documented proof. The American technician explains as I fight with others for the recognition of our rank. I have another witness who is in the same unit as me. I try as a last resort. I'm sorry. He shrugs his shoulders. I have my guidelines. As long as you cannot produce any documentation, Your rank will be listed as undetermined, and you must work. Please sign here. I hold the rank of sergeant and will only sign in this condition. I remain firm. It's up to you, then sign as a sergeant, he says calmly. An hour later, all those who do not have their sold books are called to the dining hall by the camp spokesman. There is no other possibility but to compile a list and request verification of your rank from the International Red Cross in Geneva. But that takes weeks. In the meantime, the Americans will require you to work and assign you to work groups. The trick in New York was successful, he concludes sarcastically. That is the most awkward net I have ever fallen into, I say angrily to Hocker and Siegfried on our way back to our quarters. It is all shit, Siegfried waves in resignation. Let's just go together and pick cotton. You really want to have your fun with me, I swear in anger. No question that I will go to work too, Hocker tries to comfort me. It doesn't bother me. I wanted to speak with you about it anyway. I am tired of lying around here. Besides that, I am impressed more with $20 than $5. It's just the way they do it that stinks. To take your sold book and then demand later that you have it to prove your rank, that's just a damn swindle. The anger returns to me again. I have even worse news. Siegfried raises his eyebrows. Perhaps you will cool yourselves on it. Out with it. Let's take care of the whole mess at once, I say, not knowing what he has in mind. The Russians are in Berlin, the Americans in Munich. The war is completely lost, he says, fighting back the tears. Hot, unbearably hot, shines the sun in Oklahoma. But much hotter burn the hearts of the people. By the mill in the Black Forest Valley in the prisoner of war camp Gruber in the American state of Oklahoma, 3 German soldiers sit and listen to the clattering of the mill wheel and feel they have lost the world. Our thoughts go out to the furthest corners of Germany, but are continually reduced until they encircle only a handful of people who at this hour offer the only bond. We knew for a long time. Why do we squat now, like when someone has hit us on the head with a hammer? Siegfried breaks the silence. We have known for a long time that we all must die and still are sad when it comes, I explain mournfully. Didn't you always say that we will go on afterward? He offers, undistracted. All the time, I concur, or perhaps the mill will not clatter any more. Then let's see if the uniforms are dry. I want to put mine on when they are ready, Hocker says, and stands up stiffly. Prepare to die. Hocker and I are greeted as we enter the barracks and lay our cleanly washed uniforms on the bed. Do you know the latest? The blonde asks. I'm satisfied with the old, I rejoin. Hitler has abdicated. He laughs idiotically. The Americans claim he shot himself. Another grins. Do you believe that nonsense? The blonde questions. No, I want to have the documentary proof just like the Americans want it from me, I say with double meaning, at which they break out in roaring laughter. Harmless fools, I think. Your awakening will be terrible.